Horace DC here. I've decided to borrow a good friend DC's channel. He's more than my good friend, he's my cousin. So I'm going to tell you tonight a story that is real. It's the story of Horace Mayhew. Now I heard this story a few years back on the radio, and I've got to say I never was able to find it again. So I have to give it from memory. Anyway, just listen. Horace Mayhew, this story is about 100 years old, when not more. Horace Mayhew was one of these misers. He was such a miser. He lived northern Canada, and he was rich. Rich, rich, rich. How did he become rich? Nobody knows. But one thing is, the man hardly ever talked. Why? Because he heard that silence was gold and speech was silver, and this man wanted gold. Now, the story goes is that Horace had this horde of dogs. Wild dogs. And when everybody would come close to his house, these dogs would go wild. They would bark. They would bark like mad. Now, one day his main dog died. Now, Horace is really, really sad. Not that he loved his dog. Horace loved nothing. But Horace realized he might have to buy a new dog, and that meant spending money. So what Horace did is he started barking himself. When somebody came close to his house, he would bark like a wild dog. He'd do even better than that. He'd leave dog poop all over, so that people would think they were real dogs. He went even so far as to try and make money out of his dead dog. He tried to sell that dead dog to the Indians. The Indians were too smart. They looked at that meat and they said, "This animal hardly ever ate. Nothing on that animal. No way." Now, about 5-6 years ago, I heard the second part of this story. Because you see, Horace, being such a miser and such a mean man, people just left him alone, and he just kind of disappeared. People knew that there was something that was strange in that part of the country, but they actually didn't know what was going on. People talked about the werewolf. Now one day, about 10 years ago, a young man was going to visit his family. J.B. Tremblay. Tremblay was his name. I think in Canada they call him Tremblay. Or Tremblay. Tremblay. Doesn't matter. This is just a story. So J.B. was on his way, and it was a snowstorm. And the storm was getting bigger and bigger. His car, well, got bogged down. J.B. got out, walked up, heard these wild dogs. These wild dogs. He ran up, and then he saw a house. Went into this house, knocked on the door. Knocked on the door and said, "Quickly, open, wild dogs." Excuse me, too much to drink. These wild dogs. Somebody answered the door and said, "Hello?" J.B. was freezing, but this man's hand was cold as ice. White was the man's face. He said, "Come on in." Actually, he said, "Come on in." J.B. walked right in. I maybe forgot to tell you something very important. This actually happened on Christmas Eve. This is actually important, don't forget that. Now, JB said, "Oh, thank you, sir." The man said, "Are you hungry? I am getting ready for a meal." JB realized this was a very strange man, and when he walked into the dining saloon, there was all this food. Don't forget, we are in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of winter. And there was flowers. There was loads of things that should not be there at this season. JB said, "This is very strange, but the food is so good." Then at one point, one heard, dong, 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 dong. It should be 12. 12 meant midnight. What did that mean? It was midnight. Then something very strange happened. Horace Mayhew. Yes, that man was Horace Mayhew. He rised up into the air. And he disappeared. JB woke up many hours later in his own car again. But he remembered something. There was a story going on about this Horace Mayhew. That a young man once went to this house and wasn't asked in. He wasn't actually invited in. He tried to come in. And Horace said, "No, go away. You're going to come rob me." What JB thinks happened is that Horace needed for his soul to be nice to someone. JB remembers one thing at midnight that happened. Excuse me again. Is that at midnight sharp, when Horace went up in the air and disappeared, he heard a wolf or a wild dog. And JB thinks it must be this. It must be the devil saying, "You've taken my man. You've liberated him." Do you believe this? Can this be a true story? What do you think? Honest DC.